What was your favorite part of SummerSlam? Was it Sonya Deville doing her broken Matt Hardy impression? All well wishes with her, we know what she's going through. Was it Dominik Mysterio's in-ring debut, which was pretty solid, but resulted in his father in handcuffs on the ring ropes, watching him get his face smashed in? Was it a great match between Randy Orton and Drew McIntyre that ended in a backslide, with Drew McIntyre retaining, which would just set up their match next week at Payback? Or was it everybody's favorite, Roman Reigns? Was it The Fiend and Braun Strowman, The Fiend winning the Universal Championship, for Roman Reigns to return? I guess the pandemic's over to Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns comes back, spears both of them, and holds up the title, so again, Bray Wyatt will be buried once again, 5 years into his reign, and we're still trying to make Roman Reigns look strong. SummerSlam full show review. Go nowhere else. To the people that normally watch this show, this is a little bit more of a different setup. The lighting over here is not so hot, so I've rearranged it all around. And again, there's more color in the background, obviously my Kobe Bryant posters. But SummerSlam 2020, that is the show that we are going to talk about today, because there's a lot to talk about with SummerSlam 2020. Regardless of what you thought about the show, was it good, was it bad? I will say this, the show was very eventful. And I think that, you know, whether the show was good or bad in your eyes, when a show is eventful, that's important. It brings everything into light, and it gives you something to talk about the next day. Now, me personally, I didn't understand why Randy Orton and Drew wasn't main eventing, and then we saw the main event, and we understood why that happened. But we're going to talk about SummerSlam 2020 here, ladies and gentlemen. I think this was one of WWE's better shows of the year. Now, some people will say, oh, you're full of it, Nick. I can't disagree with you anymore. In all honesty, this show flowed. It wasn't perfect. There were some decisions and some things that I'm just going to completely crap on when I get to them. But first, we're going to talk about the Kickoff Show match. The Kickoff Show match was not everybody's cup of tea. I didn't really watch it. And I hate to say it because I don't really watch the Kickoff Show. It was Apollo Crews defending his United States Championship against MVP. Now, I thought, in all honesty, there was a good chance that the Hurt Business could get involved, and it was going to revolve around MVP potentially winning the championship. Because of that, they put the show on the Kickoff Show. Half the people probably didn't even watch it. Basically, Crews started off well. He used pure speed and athleticism to cause issues for the 46-year-old challenger. MVP eventually tossed Crews over the top rope and into the ring apron to take things over. Crews made the comeback, hitting a big dive over the top rope to the outside before countering an MVP playmaker into his toss powerbomb to score the pin and retain his title. After the match, Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin, both banned from ringside, ran in to try to attack Crews, but the champion managed to evade them before making his way to the ramp with the title. Like almost every kickoff match on pay-per-view shows, there wasn't much here, as it was just a small taste of action ahead of the actual show. There are and have been better Crews vs. MVP clashes out there. Crews defeats MVP to retain his title. MVP does not need to be in a wrestling ring. The only time MVP should be in a wrestling ring is if he has a microphone. But for some reason, we have MVP in a wrestling ring in 2020 challenging for a title that one of his, if not both of his lackeys could benefit from. Why is Shelton Benjamin not in this spot? Obviously, SummerSlam Fallout, we won't have to wait too long to see what happens, because next week, next Sunday, we have another pay-per-view. That's right, less than 7 days later, we have another wrestling pay-per-view, and if you want to talk about things that don't make sense, you can add this to the very long list. Anyways, Apollo Crews retains. Good for him. The actual show opens up. You can watch these reviews. I know the lighting is not so hot in this video, but we're going to have to bear with it. Next things next. Or actually, we'll just do video overlay, so we'll be okay instead. The show kicks off with one of two women's championship matches. Now, I thought going into this, I said, well, listen, Bayley is fighting Asuka. Sasha's fighting Asuka. The logical decision here is you have Asuka split. She's obviously not going to lose both matches against her counterparts. Asuka was not going to beat Bayley, because obviously the whole entire idea is for the Sasha and Bayley turn whenever that is happening, and I will talk about this a little bit later on in the review, that those seeds were actually planted tonight in the Raw Women's Championship match. Now, Bayley was not going to lose this match, because Bayley losing and a Raw superstar winning the SmackDown Women's Championship adds a whole lot of nothing to anything. So the right decision here was to have Bayley retain, and that's how it went. So basically, An aggressive Asuka came out fast. The challenger immediately took the fight to Bayley and roughed her up, possibly in an attempt to score the win fast and save up some energy for her match later with Sasha Banks, who was ringside for the match, of course. Asuka hit a big DDT on the outside of the ring, leaping from the ring steps to drive Bayley headfirst into the floor. Bayley fired back using some nasty offense as she became increasingly frustrated with the challenger. Bayley hit an early Bayley to belly for a near fall. Asuka took momentum back moments later, landing some hip attacks to score on her own 2 count. Bayley began an attack on her legs with a chop block and a leg lock. The momentum continued to swing back and forth. Bayley tried to hit the top rope elbow drop, but caught in an armbar. Banks, however, was going to find some type of way to get involved into this match, and we all knew that was coming. Banks used a minor collision as Bayley tried to escape and provided another distraction that almost allowed Bayley to win with a schoolboy roll-up. Banks got back on the ring apron, took a hip attack from Bayley, allowing Bayley to score the flash pinfall. The duo attacked Asuka after the match, softening her up for the match with Sasha Banks later. This was a solid bout as expected and smart booking ahead of the second Asuka match. The ending in particular was well booked in having Banks assist for the win, which will pay off if Bayley doesn't return the favor later. That last sentence is so crucial. This is by CBS Sports, by the way. The ending in particular was well booked because, again, that made so much sense later on in the show because Sasha Banks assisted and helped Bayley retain her championship, and later on in the show, Sasha loses her Raw Women's Championship to Asuka, and it appears that Bayley is not there to return the favor. So that right there is the beginnings of what are supposed to be the planting of the seeds for the Sasha and Bayley feud, which would result in Sasha winning the SmackDown Women's Championship and hopefully having a run with it, because she doesn't seem to have much of runs with titles of anything. Following that match was the Raw Tag Team Championship match. This match was underwhelming. You know, these are 2 tag teams that have a lot of skill in the tag team division, and I'm going to sit here and say that I was very underwhelmed with what happened in the Raw Tag Team Championship match. The Street Profits are great, but again, we spent the whole first half of the year in wrestling with comedic competitions between the Street Profits and Viking Raiders, so you gave me I didn't care, you know what I'm saying? I was given no choice to care about anything that these guys did. Andrade and Angel Garza are a gift from God, and I thought in all honesty that they should have won the tag team titles here. We did have quite a few title changes in regards to SummerSlam as a whole, but I thought it would have made sense if they had won the title because clearly they are the hotter team and needed more than the Street Profits do. Raw Tag Team Championship, Street Profits and Angel and Garza. A hot start by Montez Ford was quickly cut off. He was isolated from his corner as Andrade and Garza worked him over. Garza held up Ford in the corner at one point. It allowed Andrade to hit a big double stomp from the top rope. Angel Dawkins eventually got the hot tag, but was cut off by Andrade's back elbow. Ford came back in with a huge crossbody. Moments later, he ran into Zelina Vega, who was on the ring apron. Garza bumped Vega, knocking her to the floor, and Andrade attended to her rather than staying in the corner for the tag. This confusion allowed the Profits to hit the cash out for the win. Solid enough tag action in the early stretch, but there wasn't enough to the match after the initial hot tag. The ending sequence came way too fast, really kneecapping the match. The match was not that great to begin with, so regardless of how this ending was, I was not really that interested in it to begin with, and it had nothing to do with both teams, because we know that they're both talented and definitely valuable. The Raw Tag Team division is genuinely just non-existent. Andrade and Angel Garza add something special to it, but again, it just hasn't felt important, and hasn't felt important. Mandy Rose versus Sonya Deville in a no DQ loser leaves WWE match. This was a very good match, but not only that, before we get to the match, Sonya Deville came out looking like a female version of Broken Matt Hardy, and I thought that was really cool. I have to give her credit for that. And another thing too, I think we all knew going into this match when it was switched to a loser leaves WWE that it was going to result in Mandy Rose winning. And that kind of sucks because Sonya Deville is on a hot streak right now, but we know obviously with the whole kidnapping situation and everything that she's going through, probably mentally and physically, that a leave of absence right now is probably the best thing in Sonya Deville's interest. How am I going to say that? But from what we're told, I definitely can understand, and we all understand that, and we hope that everything continues to go planned for Sonya Deville. These two had a good story going in, and the match was pretty good. I will say that CBS Sports gave it a C-. It was a cluster, but I honestly disagree. I thought it was a bit better of a match than it got credit for. An aggressive Mandy Rose went at Deville early, laying a beating on her around ringside before setting up a table. This time spent setting up the table allowed Deville to grab a chair and ram it into Rose's midsection. Deville took over the match at that point, eventually locking in a dragon sleeper and racking the eyes before locking in a triangle armbar. Some Deville taunting fired Rose back up, and she made a comeback before placing Deville on the previously set up table. Deville rolled out of the way. Rose drove a series of running knees into Deville's face before scoring the win. The table was just a prop that was never used in the actual match. A shocked Deville threw a tantrum outside the ring after the loss. Otis made his way into the ring to celebrate with his girlfriend, who attempted her own caterpillar. Looked terrible. The match itself was a bit of a mess and never fully clicked, and it wasn't all the best way to book it to have Rose really out-physical Deville for much of the bout. I mean, from what I've seen, it wasn't that bad. Maybe this was one of those matches where I probably should have paid a little bit of a closer eye to. But in all general honesty, obviously Deville's going away. Best of wishes to her. And Mandy Rose, I didn't think they did too bad. Somebody mentioned when it was a hair versus hair match prior to the match being made as the no disqualification loser leaves the company. Once it was made to a loser leaves WWE, we knew exactly Mandy Rose was winning. But when it was hair versus hair, somebody said they could have had Sonya Deville win, and as she's getting ready to cut Mandy Rose's hair, have Otis come out and beg Sonya not to do it. And the way he gets her not to do it is by saying, "I will give you the Money in the Bank briefcase." Sonya would take the briefcase, not cut Mandy's hair. She would cash it in later in the night to win the SmackDown Women's Championship. Now that would offset the Bayley and Sasha feud, but as a general idea, that was good. But I don't know who thought of that. I don't know. Everybody in the community says one thing, but we don't know who gets credit for what. But that would have been a good idea. We have newcomers. Perhaps one of the best built feuds, or leading up to SummerSlam, is Dominik Mysterio and Seth Rollins. Now, before going into this match, this feud was kind of confusing. I think that this match between Dominik and Seth could have easily happened at Extreme Rules, and then it would follow with Ray versus Seth at SummerSlam. Now, we don't know when Ray and Seth are going to finally have that match, but now it almost seems as if, are they really just going to push it for next Sunday? Are they going to push it out to Survivor? How long do you push this feud between Dominik, Ray, and Seth? This match was a street fight, which played into Dominik because it wasn't a pure wrestling match, because had it been a pure wrestling match, Dominik his weaknesses would be easily shown, and that is something that we don't want. Rollins had his way early. Rey Mysterio was ringside, and it was only going to be a way before he got involved, but the way that they countered his involvement was pretty good. Rollins had his way early, toying with Mysterio, but Mysterio came back with some punches. And when I'm saying Mysterio, I'm referring to Dominik. This is Dominik's in-ring debut. He looked pretty solid last night. A nice lucha arm drag. Rollins had Murphy give him a kendo stick, but Mysterio was able to take it and almost out it to use before Rollins was able to neutralize the threat. Rollins continued taunting Rey Mysterio at ringside, trying to get him to jump in the ring, but Dominik, who earlier made his dad promise to not get involved in the match, kept waving him off. Rey Mysterio, standing ringside, wanted to do everything he possibly could to get involved in his son's match, but Dominik was saying he's a man and he has to handle his own business. Soon it was Rollins, body stripped with bruises and blood from the earlier shots from Mysterio, used a kendo stick to unleash an assault. Rollins set up a table and moved Mysterio to the top rope, but Mysterio fired back and he used a kendo stick to deliver a side Russian leg sweep with the kendo stick through the table. Mysterio went up top and hit a frog splash for a 2 count. Mysterio tried to slide a chair into the ring, but Rollins knocked it away and hit a huge powerbomb. Rollins removed Mysterio's top and then laid him with another series of hard kendo stick shots before grabbing a pair of handcuffs from Murphy, leading to Angie Mysterio starting to walk her way towards the ring. Now, I don't remember the last time that Rey Mysterio's wife was on WWE television. It was probably somewhere around Ruthless Aggression era. I don't know, but to see Rey Mysterio's wife there was a big thing, because we don't typically see her ever on WWE television. But it built towards the family feud, which was great. Angie came out from the back, and she came out from the back. The distraction allowed Dominik to score a flash ping, but it ultimately resulted in Murphy getting involved because Rey Mysterio went to the stage to confront Angie, and as he was doing that with his back turned, which was not the smartest idea, by the way, Murphy got involved. He tried to driving his eye towards the ring steps. Remember when Rey Mysterio got his eye driven into the ring steps at the Eye for an Eye match at Extreme Rules? He tried to do the same to Dominik. The distraction almost allowed as he tried to drive into the ring step. Rollins handcuffed Rey to the middle rope and looked at Angie. But Dominik made the save, ultimately hitting a 619. Rey Mysterio got handcuffed to the rope as he came back to the ring. So obviously there wasn't going to be much that he could do in this match. Rollins removed Mysterio's top. We got past that. Dominik made the save, however. He hit a nice 619. If you've ever in your life, when I was younger, I tried to hit it so many times. The 619 is one of the hardest things in the world to hit if you do not have the training. It requires the most core strength. It is absolutely ridiculous. Anyways, he hit a 619. He tried for a frog splash, so I thought, you know, I don't think it was going to end this way. But when he went for the frog splash, Rollins got his knees up, right into Dominik's abdomen. As he crawled toward his dad, Rollins hit a stomp for the win. Rey Mysterio had to watch. This was an outstanding effort for Dominik in his first true match, and on a massive stage no less. He looked smooth and never looked like a rookie, even in a lengthy match. This match was great. I loved the match between Dominik and Seth. If I could nitpick, I would say that they could have gotten more objects and certain things like that involved. But in all honesty, I can't complain too much. You know, this weekend we saw two guys that don't have much wrestling experience. Now, you give Dominik a little bit of an edge because, for Christ's sakes, his dad is Rey Mysterio, and he trains. But Pat McAfee on Saturday night in the brilliant takeover match against Adam Cole really showed out. And then Dominik in his first match, the kid's as green as grass, and he delivered. I don't really have too much to complain about with that. You know, I got to tip my hat off to Dominik. He did great last night. But Seth Rollins wins. Now, obviously, with Payback coming next Sunday, you have to beg the question of, is it going to be a rematch? Or are we going to have Rey versus Seth? I think, regardless of what you say about the main roster, tonight's Monday Night Raw is going to be very eventful. And there's going to be a lot of matches made because they don't have much time. There's not much time. They should have at least tried to have had a bigger gap. Now, I think we have a couple pay-per-views in a row. Next week we have Payback, which is just going to be a match littered with SummerSlam rematches. And the week after that is AEW All Out. So it's going to be a hefty couple of weeks for wrestling fans. But this was a great match, and I really can't complain about much that Dominik did. I'm almost running at 20 minutes, and I got 3 matches to go, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be a little bit of a longer review. I thank you all always for sticking with me. But Rey and Dominik is going to hopefully have some interesting segment tonight on Monday Night Raw. 2 of 2 women's championship matches. Now, a lot of people complained after this match that Sasha Banks should be given better with the title, be giving a better defense. I agree, but at the same time, with this built towards the inevitable story, I can't complain about it too much because I felt, in all honesty, the way that this ended and Sasha showing her first signs of frustration with Bayley, it is the baby steps. We are at step 1. The seeds have been planted for a heel turn feud and a feud between Sasha and Bayley. The Raw Women's Championship should have never been on Sasha to begin with. I mean, I don't think that they had it planned out to the point where she was going to defend it to Asuka. Like, WWE doesn't do long-term planning, but this is one of the things where there's some long-term planning involved with it. Again, you know, Asuka came to the ring with a limp from earlier match with Bayley, setting a target for Banks to focus on from the jump. Banks hit Asuka with a huge sunset flip powerbomb from the ring apron to the floor, snapping her head against the concrete in a sick-looking spot. Asuka focused an attack on Banks' leg, turning the tables on the earlier action, but was quickly taken to the top rope by Banks. Asuka reversed the position into a diving DDT from the middle rope, forcing Banks to roll out of the ring. After some momentum swings, Bayley gave Banks a pep talk, but the champion was almost caught in an Asuka lock. Banks locked up a Banks statement before he reversed into the Asuka lock again. A near replay of the earlier match happened with Bayley getting on the apron and into the ropes, where she moved out of the way of Asuka's hip attack. Banks took the bullet for Bayley earlier in the night, and moments later Asuka again locked up the Asuka lock for submission, which resulted in Sasha's tapping and Asuka winning the Raw Women's Championship. Really slick callback in the storytelling, with Bayley not willing or not being willing to sacrifice herself the same way Banks did. And the actual in-ring action was fantastic and a better show. Asuka and Sasha was a great match. If you look beyond everything, Sasha and Asuka, when they care and if they want to, they're capable of putting on a great match. This was actually one of the better matches of the night, in all honesty, if you're asking me. Sasha Banks, again, loses the Raw Women's Championship, but the whole idea here is Bayley not sacrificing herself the way Sasha did earlier to open up the show. That's where the story is. The story's not with Asuka losing the title, or Asuka winning the title, Sasha losing the title. The Raw Women's Championship was almost the least important thing in the picture here. Never has a championship meant less in a match, because the championship is what Sasha lost, and she's mad at Bayley because Bayley didn't sacrifice when Sasha did earlier in the night. Clear as day. Step one of the feud. Now we get to a match, Randy Orton versus Drew McIntyre for the WWE title. I thought going into this match, I said there's no way that there will be no convincing me that Randy Orton won't win this title. And as mad as I wasn't even mad that Randy Orton didn't win the title. I was mad that the match ended the way that it did. But then as I thought about it, I said, well, next week is Payback. Are they going to advertise the show on this week's of a Limb? And is Randy Orton going to win the title next weekend? Orton immediately ran from McIntyre's initial attempts to engage. The Apex Predator tried to hit an RKO with a series of attempts that McIntyre avoided before Orton took over along the outside of the ring. Orton then methodically took over, picking apart McIntyre on the mat with stomps. McIntyre, worn down from the early assault on Orton, fired back with an attack on the legs of Orton, including locking in a figure four. With McIntyre torquing the pressure, Orton pulled the referee forward and then dug his fingers into McIntyre's eyes while the referee couldn't see the rule violation. McIntyre, now bleeding near his eye from Orton's foul, stormed back with a series of belly-to-belly suplexes. Belly-to-belly suplexes. McIntyre struck with the Future Shock DDT for a near fall. A glass cow kick headbutt from McIntyre appeared to open a cut on the forehead of Orton, adding a bit more blood to the match. There was color in this match, and I think that both colors were legit. Moments later, Orton lined up for a punt as the action returned from the floor to the ring. McIntyre countered with a big power bomb. McIntyre lined up for Claymore. This is where I thought the end of the match was coming. Drew McIntyre completely missed the Claymore kick. Orton ducked, tried to reverse it into an RKO. McIntyre spun into a backslide pin, and just like that, the match ended. What a brilliant finish, avoiding a finish for either man in a big pay-per-view title. Is against type for WWE, and made a tremendous shock finish that did nothing to halt the momentum of either man. Great match, better finish. I disagreed at first because I wanted to see Randy Orton punt Drew McIntyre into oblivion, but then when I thought about it, I was like, well, that actually was pretty smart. That was just me being frustrated in the moment. I thought about it and I was like, yeah, that's pretty smart. Drew McIntyre retains his championship, and a finish that nobody saw coming. Again, the whole idea behind SummerSlam was you'll never see it coming. I didn't see that coming. It's going to probably set up a match for them at Payback. And again, one of the things that it did do is Drew McIntyre is still champion, and Randy Orton doesn't look weak whatsoever. The main event of SummerSlam 2020. Now, when the show ended the way that it did, everything that happened with Orton and McIntyre made sense, because I think the last thing anybody wanted to see was a backslide pin to end what was supposed to be the best match of SummerSlam. It was a great match. And by the way, the second half of this show was just complete fire. Once the Sasha and Asuka Banks match happened, everything from that point was just complete great. Not perfect, great. Universal Championship, Braun Strowman versus The Fiend Bray Wyatt. We knew damn well going in, and we knew months beforehand, that Bray Wyatt was going to win the Universal Championship. But what we didn't know was what was going to happen afterwards. Strowman tried to explode early, but Wyatt quickly took over before trying to use a toolbox. Moments later, Strowman drove Wyatt through the ringside barricade. Strowman tossed Wyatt onto the announce table and then drilled him with the ringside steps before hitting the power slam for a 2 count. The two battled into the backstage area, with Wyatt hitting Sister Abigail in gorilla position for his own near fall. That was a nice little move there. They battled back to the ring, Strowman bleeding from a cut on the side of his head, and the champion hit another running power slam for a 2 count. Strowman grabbed a box cutter, cut away the padding from the ring, which exposed the wooden part of the ring, but turned to be hit with a Uranagi Sister Abigail picked up again, and another Sister Abigail. And just like that, Bray Wyatt, The Fiend, wins the Universal Championship. We knew it was going to happen. The match itself was okay. You know, it was one of Braun Strowman's better matches of the year. Two powerhouses, and again, for how they played, the match could have been a little bit more, but I think, you know, I can't complain about too much on this match. But it's what happened after the match that was the shock factor. After the match, all of a sudden, some big guy comes into the ring, and look who it is. It's Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns made a shocking return. He ran into the ring, he delivered a spear to The Fiend before doing the same to Braun Strowman on the outside of the ring. Followed by a series of brutal chair shots to Strowman. Reigns then laid out Wyatt again and poised the Universal Championship to end the show. He went for another spear. Solid enough match with the needed chaos to overcome any in-ring issues between the two men together. Reigns' return was a true shock, and he looked phenomenal in running through the two men who dominated the top end of SmackDown, adding some electricity to the end of the show. The Fiend wins the Universal Championship. Roman Reigns returns, takes out both of them, and holds up the title to end the show. I was never a fan of Roman Reigns when they were shoving him down our throats for 4 or 5 years straight as a top guy when he wasn't good at promos, his in-ring work was not fun to watch, and he was just cringe in almost everything he did. And there were so many guys that exposed Roman Reigns for what he was. However, we all clamored for Roman Reigns to be heel because that's what Roman Reigns needs to be. He needs to be heel. Roman Reigns came back last night, and I noticed the weird things. I noticed that he had his teeth bleached or whitened. Roman Reigns looked a little bit smaller, but he still looked very muscular. He looked like a beast last night. Roman Reigns had a shirt that said, "Wreck everyone and leave," which begs the question, and some people have actually mentioned this. Nick, do you think, or whoever, I saw this on Twitter, can Roman Reigns secretly be the leader of Retribution? That's possible, but I don't think that, and if that is the case, I think that it should be a while before that's revealed. I don't think that should be revealed right away. But what if Roman Reigns, when he has that Universal title match, Retribution interferes and assists Roman Reigns, when Roman Reigns can clearly win almost any match clean, assists Roman Reigns for that victory, and we see Roman Reigns winning the Universal Championship, and that'll really push him as a heel. But it's good to see Roman Reigns back. If he's a heel and he looks the way he did yesterday, I have no problem with him. I was having a problem with his monster push in the beginning, but again, the time away helped, and it was genuinely good to see Roman back. Again, anybody that struggled with health the way that he did, I was definitely rooting for him to succeed. It sucks because it comes at the cost of The Fiend, who was buried by Goldberg. Lost to Seth Rollins, buried by Goldberg. Started to get some momentum back, and again, just like that, The Fiend will be pinned clean by Roman Reigns in whatever Universal title match or whatever time period that Universal title match takes place. We're running towards 30 minutes, but thank you everybody as always for watching. I hope you enjoyed SummerSlam and continue to stay safe.